Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the co-chair of Tennessee's Civil War Sesquicentennial Commission, Tourism Commissioner Susan Whitaker.
Good morning. This is a very special morning, one we've been looking forward to for a long time. I'm so glad that you're here, and it's my honor to be here to welcome you on behalf of Governor Haslam and our Sesquicentennial Commission. We are going to have an incredible program, and if you will join me right now in standing as we post the colors for the United States of America and the state of Tennessee and our Civil War era colors, followed by a musical performance by very special guests, the New Hope Academy Choir. Please be seated. What a wonderful way to start Friday morning and this incredible day. Their musical director, Miss Tina Boone, what a gorgeous job you have done with those kids. That was absolutely spectacular. Thank you. How about another round of applause for that? Well, as I mentioned when I first started, this is such an exciting day. It's an exciting day for me for several different reasons. One is I have been so blessed to be the co-chair of our Tennessee Sesquicentennial Commission, but also I'm a resident of Franklin, and I am so proud of the way this community has cherished, nurtured, and then interpreted the history of this area so that visitors can come here and understand just how important things that happened here were and still are impacting us today. And as you go through the entire day today, and I hope you'll take advantage of, there's exhibits here that are incredible, there's living history that's going to be happening all weekend long, but especially today, some things that are happening over in our Eastern Flank Battlefield Park, of which even that is a miracle that took place. It's a community effort, one that just involves so many citizens that have, just not only is heritage important to them, but it is something that they have decided they are going to make sure that people do not forget. That involves their own economic wherewithal, making sure those battlefields are preserved and interpreted so that people can come and they can find out why this matters now. And the people that were there and went through this 150 years ago in weather that was this cold and weather that was kept them away from their families, just the watershed moment this was for our entire nation. There are historians here today that are going to be able to interpret this and give you wonderful, wonderful lectures on why this was all important, much better than I can. But I will tell you, as somebody that came here 12 years ago and really wasn't too aware of any of the Southern history surrounding the Civil War. I'm from Chicago, the south side of Chicago, but that's as far south as I ever got. And my history understanding was pretty parochial. It's very that region interprets things certain ways, and I think it's important for us to bring everybody together into these kinds of, they're sessions, but they're also times when we kind of rub shoulders together and we discuss these things to find out why it still matters and what impact it's had on both North and South, and then coming together and creating the modern United States of America that has been the superpower and been such a force for good throughout the last 150 years. Wouldn't have happened if we hadn't gone through such a horribly tragic time, but one that people, they just laid their lives down for, and something we can never forget. And that way to keep that going is to be having these kinds of meetings, preserving our battlefields, making sure they're interpreted, and inviting people to come. So it's been such a treasure for me to be involved with this. I thank the people who've been involved. As I mentioned earlier that I was welcoming you on behalf of Governor Bill Haslam. We'll tell you that Governor Bill Haslam has been extremely supportive of what I've been doing in tourism, because he does see that this is something that involves, it gets people out there. They want to come and see what's on the Civil War Trail. But even more importantly, he's a student of history and wanted to make sure these were things that we were not letting go by without making sure that we were telling the story appropriately, the entire story. There's been pieces of this story that have been left out over the years. We wanted to make sure everybody had the opportunity to talk about the impact that it had on their particular family or on their particular region. And in Tennessee, we have kind of a unique story. Lots of Confederate-occupied Union territories, Union-occupied Confederate territories. The last to secede, the first to come back into the Union. I think that there is such rich history that's here in Tennessee. So you're here, and it's, as I mentioned, you're in for a real treat all day long. But it wouldn't have happened without the fact that we have this commission, which wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the dollars to be able to do that. And our legislators, on a continuing basis, led by Representative Steve McDaniel, who is here, and has been such a driving force in making sure that our Civil War history in Tennessee was not forgotten and that it needed to be nurtured Richard. He has made that something that the entire legislature, General Assembly of Tennessee is aware of, and they've been able to fund many of our activities, but not just them. Also, other citizens, private citizens, other organizations have come forward and said, this is important to us. We're going to make sure that we do not forget this history. So I'm thrilled to be able to say that today we've got 700 students that are going to be going over to see a living history demonstration over in our eastern flank, Battlefield Park here in Franklin. I hope you'll get over there also. It's going to be a beautifully sunny day, and we will enjoy that. And I want to also say our Civil War Sesquicentennial Commission, which it's hard to believe, it's been in operation now as a working commission for about 9 years. We became a formal commission under Governor Phil Bredesen about 7 years ago, and it seemed like this was going to be years away. The Sesquicentennial, oh my goodness, that's forever away. And it's here already. And we're able to invite people from all around the world. We have people coming to this particular meeting from 6 different countries and from, I believe it's 24 different states. We are thrilled to have you here. Hope I get a chance to meet some of you that have come from other places, and you'll let me know your stories and why you're here. But you are certainly welcome here in Tennessee. You will see things, I believe, from a perspective that you may never have seen them before. I'm very proud of the way Franklin has embraced their history and the way that they have become a model for historic preservation and for battlefield preservation. It's pretty exciting to be somebody in the community watching that happen by the people who are in charge here. Now, one of the greatest pleasures I've had also is getting to know our next speaker. Dr. Carol Van West has so many titles, has so many awards that he's won. The latest one is that he was appointed by Governor Bill Haslam as our state historian. And he has been my co-chair for the Sesquicentennial Commission. And he is the person that whenever I had a question about, does this seem appropriate or not, he knew the answer. He also knew those folks across the country and across the world. We have somebody here from Ireland today to talk to us, Damien Shields. We're so excited about that. But we have people that he knows, that know him, and he's been able to extend invitations to them to come and join us for this. So it is my pleasure right now, and I would ask you to join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Carol Van West.
Good morning, Franklin. Man, have we been waiting for this day to get here. And it's a glorious day. Yeah, it's cold. Well, some people would say it was going to be a cold day somewhere else for this to ever happen in Franklin, Tennessee, just about anywhere. So revel in what's happening over the next few days, and really what's happening throughout the rest of the month. Because we're looking seriously back at our past, what made us a community, what made us a nation, and how we take all of that once again and build the country that we all love to be part of. My first job today is really a pleasant one, and that is to acknowledge so many different key individuals who have helped us get to this point in our statewide commemoration of the Civil War. And you'll see these people at the meeting this morning, the sessions in the afternoon, out at the Battlefield Park, throughout all of the different events, because that's what sort of makes these guys special. They're truly committed to what's been going on, and through their official offices or just through their own energy and insight, they have brought so much to our efforts. So I want to recognize our Secretary of State, Trey Hargett. Trey's been a strong supporter of everything that's going on, and if you haven't been over to the archives yet to see what is going on with the Tennessee State Library and Archives program, you want to do that. Adjutant General Max Haston, General, has been part of our programs throughout the years, and I thank you for that service to your state. Commissioner Susan Whitaker never says much about herself, but I think everyone in Franklin particularly knows what a dynamo she's been for not only this community, but for the state as a whole. tourism benefits us in many ways that are hard to grasp, and because we take it for granted. But her agency and her department, they're the glue that keeps all of this together. They're working tireless hours, and it's not only Susan Whitaker and all of the work that Susan has brought to the commission, but her staff is just tremendous. And many of you already have communicated with Patricia Gray or Lee Curtis or Rob Sherrill, and we could go on with all of the key ways that our Department of Tourist Development serves the state. I want to also acknowledge members of the General Assembly that, again, you'll see throughout the weekend. Senator Jack Johnson and Senator Bill Ketron. They're old veterans of this. They've heard me drone on many different times, and I always will thank them for putting up with me one more time. Representative Jerry Durham and Representative Glenn Casada, again, key supporters of what we're doing at the state level. And I just want to second what Commissioner Whitaker said about our good friend Steve McDaniel. Sometimes in state government, people think only of their own community. And if you haven't been to Parker's Crossroads in West Tennessee, you need to go to that battlefield. It's one of the best battlefield parks in the state, in the South. And Steve was central in making that happen. But he works with everyone across the state. Steve, you really have been a hero to everything we've been doing for the Civil War Sesquicentennial, and I want to sort of give you a special shout out this morning. We also have this weekend special guests from Minnesota. They're here because, again, some of the roles of the Minnesota regiments in both Franklin and Nashville. So the Secretary of State of Minnesota, Mark Ritchie, is here. Senator Bruce Anderson, Representative Jerry Newton, and Representative Dean Erdahl. Welcome to the South, guys. I would just wish you had kept your cold temperatures with you up in Minnesota. I also want to acknowledge certain nonprofit and just community leaders that have been involved with this for many years. And so we had a few moments this morning to sort of reminisce about, did we really think this was going to happen when we started some of this heritage tourism and historic preservation so many years ago? As some of you have heard me say many times in Franklin, anytime Mary Pierce, the director of the Heritage Foundation of Franklin and Williamson County, calls me, Van, come on over, we need your help, I try to get here as soon as I can. She's been a visionary and a committed leader for this community for many years. So too, Ernie and Nell Bacon. Really, as first Ernie with the City Council, now with Franklin's Charge, has done so much. Rod and Kay Heller, again, they were there at the beginning when we really started that whole concept and idea of a Franklin Civil War battlefield park. Julian Bibb and Robert Hicks. Good friends, have done so much for the community. And also Stacy Watson. Stacy is one of these people who's always in the sort of background, much like Patricia Gray. But again, Stacy is one of those when she says, hey, we need your help. I know it's time. Something important is going to happen, and I don't want to miss out. And that's true of Deborah Warnick as well, the Director of Cultural Tourism for the county. Deborah is, again, one of those from Leapers Fork 20 years ago to these events of this weekend. All of these people have been so crucial. And that leads me into our elected officials here locally. Now, City Mayor Ken Moore and County Mayor Rogers Anderson, they're another one of these two people like Senator Johnson. I sort of feel bad too. They always have to listen to me drone on. But they have been at all of these different events over the years, always showing their support for what's going on. And of course, it's a bigger issue than just Franklin. We have Mayor Corey Napier from the city of Thompson Station here as well. And then Mike Skinner, one of the aldermen of Franklin, has always been, again, someone that I rely on for insight, input, and leadership for what we're trying to do for Franklin and for the state. I want to end my long group of shout-outs, though, back to sort of where I come from. You know, I am an educator. I'm at Middle Tennessee State University, but something I have been very proud of to watch over the last 10 years is the growth of service and the growth of community commitment from Columbia State Community College. And today, Dr. Janet Smith, the president of Columbia State, is here, and along with several other members of the faculty and of the administration. Guys, Columbia State is going to play a major role for this county and for the state, and I think their leaders are telling us a lot by being here this morning. So, these are some of the folks that I really wanted to give a special shout out to, because things don't happen without the support of our elected officials and public servants. And all of these people very much are public servants. But to give you an official welcome to both Franklin and Williamson County, for all of you who have come from different states, as well as all of you have come from different nations. This is really sort of cool to have an international audience here today. Let me first introduce Mayor Ken Moore of the city of Franklin. Ken, for many years, had a legitimate job. He was an orthopedic surgeon here for over 28 years, and of course, not just known in the city and the state, but known throughout the nation. He's been a strong supporter of what we're doing, and always his agency at Franklin City Parks does a great job of working with you. So let me introduce and let Mayor Ken Moore take the podium.
Wow, and good morning, and what a great crowd we have today. And welcome to historic Franklin, Tennessee. And I really appreciate the audience, because we, as Commissioner Whitaker mentioned, we have people from many, many states and also a number of foreign countries. And we appreciate your taking time to come so far to visit our city and to see what we're doing to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Franklin. You know, Franklin is a historic town. We like to say it's historic because we're old, 1799. We like to say we're historic because of the Battle of Franklin. But I like to also say that on a daily basis, we continue to make history in our community. This is a historic moment for a community to come together to create this event and recognition. It's quite an honor to have this as the concluding event for the Sesquicentennial for the state. But we continue to be a leader and make history as far as creating jobs, as far as the pace of our growth, as far as the many superlatives that our community is blessed to receive as far as quality of life issues, and also the fact that we continue to make history that this is one of the greatest places in America to live, work, raise a family. So welcome to Franklin, and thank you for being here today.
Now allow me a moment to introduce an old friend, Rogers Anderson, the county mayor for Williamson County. Now Rogers is like some of my other friends. He's listened to me carry on for many, many years. He was with the county commission for forever, I think, about the time I came back to Tennessee. In 1985, he joined the county commission the next year. He's been the county mayor here since 2002, and he's currently serving his third term. And the wonders that happen in this county on a daily basis, well, we can't blame them all on Rogers, but I tell you, he plays a major role in getting things done. So let me introduce Rogers Anderson, the county mayor for Williamson County.
Well, thank you, and let me echo some of the same sentiments that the city mayor, Dr. Ken Moore, said. We welcome you to the fastest growing county in the state of Tennessee. We're home to 6 cities, We have an award-winning public education system here, along with a lot of our private schools. So we're very honored that you're in our county and in our cities. We enjoy many attributes here, but none better than the people that we have that work hard for our community and for events, and to this special day and special weekend that we are having here. We say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. Enjoy the activities that are going on, and I would be amiss if I didn't ask you to please spend plenty of money while you're in our county. Thank you very, very much.
Man, we don't need that. Boy, that is the Tennessee motto, isn't it? Visit us and spend money. I love it. I love it. Next, I want to introduce an old friend that has been a good colleague of mine and someone who's always given me good advice and has been willing to listen to some of my crazy ideas for all these years. And that's our Congressman, Marsha Blackburn. Congressman Blackburn could not be with us today, but she's here very much in spirit, and as you'll see, she's very much here in the video. Congressman Blackburn has done so much for supporting heritage activities, not just the Civil War, but many others that I have been involved in. She's always been a friend to Tennessee communities throughout her district. And of course, she's from here, and she has a particular interest in and love for what's been happening here over the last decade. So with that, as just a brief thank you for all of the things that Congressman Blackburn has done, not only for this city, but for the district and for the state, I'll turn it over to the video wizards, and we'll hear a welcome from Congressman Blackburn.
Thank you, Dr. West, for that kind introduction, and welcome to the Tennessee Civil War Sesquicentennial Commemoration opening event, and welcome to Franklin, and welcome to a look back at our bold and profound history. As we learn more about the dates and the battles that make up those years, we learn more about our past and give a living touch to the faces that endured the war. There are many events for you to take part in and learn from over the next few days. Lectures, book signings, battlefield tours, museum exhibits, and I encourage you to stop in and just let that history soak all over you. The sesquicentennial of the Civil War is an important time for our nation. As we look back at the events that led up to the battle between the states, we're reminded of the great resolve to hold the Union together. It's good to dive in and learn about our darkest days, where brothers took up arms against brothers. Learning about our past is the only way we can strengthen our future together. Many of us can trace our history through the battles such as Franklin, Stones River, Shiloh. Many legacies were cut short on the hallowed grounds. While we all approach these battles, these causes, and the war with different points of view, we must find ourselves in this story. This weekend is about more than the cold facts and figures found in faded textbooks. It's about finding ourselves in that story because it is our community's story. We are, each of us, the product of someone who survived the Civil War. As we experience the happenings of 150 years ago, we honor those who fought, who died, and who survived. This weekend's signature event is the culmination of lots of hard work by the Tennessee Civil War Sesquicentennial Commission, the Tennessee State Museum, and the Battle of Franklin Trust. Thank you all for your dedication to history, and thank you for your dedication to learning more about Tennessee's role in the Civil War. It is good that you are here and seeking to understand history. I hope this weekend is a memorable one for each of you. Thank you so much.
Come on, let's show her some love, guys. Let's. I know it's sort of hard to react to a video screen, but I give the Congressman high marks for just wanting to be part of this because, like I said, she's been by our side for many years. I love that phrase too. She's sort of asking us to go out there and touch those places and think about that history. And the next person I take great pride in introducing has been a tremendous friend to Tennessee and Franklin in particular over the last several years. And boy, does this guy get it when it comes to you want to be able to go out there and touch those places and walk those fields and imagine, much as the banners behind me say, try to imagine what it was like for those soldiers under the command of Confederate General John B. Hood, directly behind me, and at the other end of the stage, Union General John Schofield. Imagine what that was like. It's hard to get that imagination going if you can't be at the actual place where it happened, where maybe you just read it in a book, not a bad thing, but then when you can combine what you know with that lived experience of walking that ground, you just can't beat it. It really brings home to you what the Civil War was all about. And again, Jim Lighthizer gets it. He's the president of the Civil War Trust. The Civil War Trust has not only helped matters here, but battlefields across the nation. What they have done in working with communities and often providing seed money or just challenge money to get everyone locally and in a region galvanized and moving forward is really how you do it. It's a sustainable historic preservation practice, but it's also good business because, as Jim has often said, battlefield preservation, it brings dollars into the community. It is part of the economic development of a community. And we certainly have seen that here in Middle Tennessee. So I want to give a shout out to the Civil War Trust for what it's meant to my state, but also my nation, and introduce to you Jim Lighthizer, President of the Civil War Trust.
Good morning, everybody. And Doctor, thank you for that very, very kind introduction. As he said, we're the Civil War Trust, and myself in particular are certainly no stranger to the state of Tennessee and particularly Franklin. I was reflecting back when I was preparing my remarks on some of the things the trust and its 50,000 members have been involved in this state, and the short answer is a whole lot. Starting in the west with Shiloh and Fort Donaldson, and of course Franklin. We've been happy to partner in a lot of deals, all the way east to Chattanooga, and a whole lot of places, Parker's, Crossroads, in between. And it's the partnership we've had with the state of Tennessee, the government, and with so many of the communities and so many of the citizens has really been special. And with respect to your Sesquicentennial Commission, I can tell you this, I get a chance to look all over the United States and work all over the United States and go all over the United States, and Virginia and Tennessee's commission, sesquicentennial celebrations, memorials, whatever one wants to call it, remembrances, education, are in a class by themselves. There's no question that you two are hands down the two best in the United States, and I commend you for that. And there are two people that I'd also like to commend, in part because I serve with them on the board of trustees of the Civil War Trust, and one, of course, is Susan Whitaker, your Commissioner of Tourism, a great lady, does a wonderful job, of course, for your state. She also does a wonderful job for the Civil War Trust, and you should know that. She's an outstanding trustee. And the other, of course, is the chairman of the board of the Civil War Trust and a member of your commission, the Tennessee Civil War Sesquicentennial Commission, and that's Mike Granger up front here. Mike is in his second year as chairman of our board, has done a terrific job, and he's one of those guys that oftentimes works very, very quietly in the shadows, but very, very effectively, and I know he has done a tremendous job for the Sesquicentennial Commission here. And some of the programs you have, I've been struck with how creative they are. That Looking Back program you have, I don't think it's any place else in the country that's done it, where people bring in memorabilia from their ancestors and share it, kind of an antique roadshow, if you will. That's cool. I think that's really neat. And of course, your Civil War Trails is tremendous, and of course it links up with North Carolina and Virginia and parts of Pennsylvania and parts of West Virginia and Maryland, which gives the visitor a national experience, if you will. And you've done, I think Mitch Bowman has helped you set that up, and he's of course the best in the country. So overall, the job you are doing in from my perspective in passing the torch of history and knowledge of our past to the present and future generations is just second to none. And I commend you for it, because, you know, history that's forgotten is history that is destined to be repeated in probably the hard way. And one of the things we never want to forget in this country, as citizens of this country, is that we never want to go through another civil war and the carnage and the terrible suffering and price that we paid for that. You know, when I look at the Civil War, first I'll go back to the Rev War. The Revolutionary War, of course, was the founding of this country. But the Revolutionary War said what we are. And of course, that's a democratic republic and an independent country, nation. But what the Civil War did was tell us who we are. It defined us as we are as a country today, because what the who is a truly free people and an equal people. And secondly, a united nation. So freedom and one nation, secession and the issue of slavery were settled. But of course, we all know the terrible price we paid in treasure, in blood, and in a gene pool that we can never reclaim from all those young men, many of whom were leaders, all of whom were courageous, all of whom fought for principles, and that gene pool's gone forever. We've lost it. We can't get it back. But when I think back on the Sesquicentennial movement, which will be over, or commemoration in the next year, at least as far as the timeline goes, we'll be able to look back, particularly in Tennessee, on some great symposia, some wonderfully creative programs. Hopefully some will continue, like the Civil War Trails I know will continue. Some great writing of history, some great reenactments, a lot of good stuff. But in the end, I'd respectfully suggest to you the thing that is going to last the longest into generations is going to be the land that we saved. Because the land is our outdoor classrooms. They're the ones that are going to teach future generations on and on and on and on. And of course, I'm in the land preservation business. We're in the land preservation business, the Civil War Trust and its 50,000 members. And we have contributed millions of dollars to buy land, preserve land in Tennessee. But probably the most outstanding example, certainly the most different example, is what's happened here in Franklin. And I'd like to tell you just a little story that is my recollection. It was probably about 2002. And I got a call from somebody down here, or some buddies down here, and said, we're having a heck of a problem in Franklin. The county wants to build this stupid library on one of the last pieces of Franklin battlefield. I think it's called the Battlefield Library or Battlefield Academy Library. So I came down here, and of course, I'm a recovering politician. I'd been in politics for 16 years, and so I went down here, and the first thing I did was went to county executive or county mayor Rogers Anderson, and I'd been a county executive in Anne Arundel County, or county mayor. We call them county executives in Maryland. You call them county mayors, which is probably more accurate in Tennessee. But I went and talked to him, and he said, you know, those folks weren't here at the beginning. When we were doing the planning years ago, and we had the hearings, when we had the dialogue about that we're going to do this and where we were going to do it and how we were going to do it, these people weren't around. And what I took from talking with him and with a number of other elected officials is that the good people, the preservationists in Franklin, well, they didn't really have their act together. They weren't politically sophisticated. They weren't involved in the process, if you will. And so the next morning I went back, and there was 8 or 9 of them, and I spoke to it, and I told them what I found out, and I said, basically, you're too late, you haven't got involved. And I told them one thing, and remember this distinctly. I said, let me give you a piece of advice. Get into politics or get out of preservation, because you can't have one without the other. And I said, you're wasting your time if you don't, and you're wasting my time. And I got on a plane and I went home, and I remember thinking on that plane, those folks can't find their backside with both hands. And they ain't got a prayer, if you excuse my grammar. And I kind of forgot about them. And then a year or two went by, and I remember reading in the newspaper once in a while, the local newspaper down here, that things were starting to happen. One of the things I remember, and I don't know if he's here or not, Sam Huffman ran for some local office. And I think he lost. But the point was, I got the feeling, the impression, folks were starting to wake up and get involved in the process. And then things really started to happen. My recollection, and I could be wrong, but what I remember was the thing that got it started was that golf course. And I can remember I was on my back porch one Saturday when Rod Heller called me. I live near Annapolis, Maryland. And he said that he was going to be buying this golf course, and he needed somebody to take him out of it, and it was going to have to be the trust. And of course we got involved, but more importantly, the community got involved. And all heck started breaking loose. And we, the community, the Civil War Trust, got that thing saved. And then one thing after another happened. I can remember that Mayor Tom Miller got elected. And I can remember coming down here and swinging a sledgehammer at the Pizza Hut with Ed Bars and helping knock that thing down. And then one mayor after another. There was John Schoer, President Mayor Moore. They were people that were committed to preservation, committed to doing something that I've never seen before, and that is Franklin just didn't preserve a battlefield. Franklin, because it was gone. Franklin just didn't restore a battlefield. Franklin resurrected a battlefield. And that comes from grassroots. It doesn't come from the top. It doesn't come from the Civil War Trust. It comes from the ground up, not the top down. And Van West mentioned a number, Carol mentioned a number of people, and I'm going to repeat some of them because I think they bear it. I'm going to leave some out, and I'm going to apologize for you, but the names that come to mind, and this is not in any particular order of importance, certainly, but Mary Ann Shore is one. I know John, her husband, the Commissioner of Transportation, and of course Mary Ann, and I can tell you she's the brains of the operation. And she was one. Mary Pierce. Mary was somebody that was very, very instrumental and certainly made an impression on me. The loquacious, silver-tongued, eloquent devil Robert Hicks was another one. I can remember he gave me a tour of Carnton early on, and it was a great tour. It was a beautiful restoration job, and I was looking out the window with Robert literally, and I said, you've done a great job of restoring the inside of this place. Now you got to do something about restoring the outside. And I pointed to the grounds around it. I said, you got to start saving battlefields. And I think of Eric Jacobson, wonderful historian who's done such a good job. And Thomas Flegel, a terrific guy. Thomas gave a knock your socks off presentation to our group in Nashville. Just terrific. One of the best speeches I've ever heard. Very, very first-rate young historian. Julian Bibb, that charming devil. He's here somewhere. Where is he? Raise your... He's back there somewhere. I'll tell you, when Julian comes, grab hold of your wallet, because it's going to cost you money. Of course, I say that with affection, Julian, but I mean it. Steve McDaniel. Steve's been mentioned. Steve's my buddy. He's a great guy. And by the way, before I say another word about Steve, his beautiful young daughter is getting married, what, next week, Steve? 29th of November. Steve asked me to invite all of you to the wedding. And see Steve afterwards for the details. He's going to put on a heck of a spread. He used to run a restaurant. This young man knows what he's doing. This boy's good at it. And Steve wants you all to come, and he said if you don't come, he's going to be real disappointed. And there's going to be so Steve, expect a few extra people. And he did say the only kind of gifts Andrea, that's his daughter, wants are barnyard animals, chickens and ducks and pigs and things like that, because they're trying to start a farm. Her husband-to-be is, and that's all the truth, and I swear to you, I wouldn't lie to you about that. Ernie Bacon's another one that comes to mind. Just a ton of people, but the point is it was local citizens, by and large, that has made what I call a near miracle possible in Franklin. And we've come down to now maybe the most important piece of ground that Franklin's Charge, the umbrella group, has under contract. That's the Lovell property, the famous flower shop. It's, I think, 1.5 acres about. It's, of course, right against the Carter House, and it is arguably the most important, significant, certainly the bloodiest piece of the battlefield. Of course, it's only $2.8 million, but what do you expect for downtown Franklin, right? But the trust is, and I don't think anybody knows this, the trust board of trustees voted at our last meeting to contribute $200,000 of our members' money to that program. And that's, thank you. Thank you. We just think it's so important, and we're so impressed, as I've obviously said, about the job that Franklin's done, that we're happy to do it. The other thing we're happy to do, and we publicly committed to doing this before, about half of this price, the $2.8 million, God willing, will come from the American Battlefield Protection Program. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it. It's a federal program administered by the National Park Service. They generally have $5 to $10 million a year in it, but it's a bureaucracy, and we're committed to helping Franklin's Charge get through that bureaucracy with the appraisals and all the other garbage that goes with working a bureaucracy. But the other thing you should know, and this is under the category of bragging, but it's true, so I'll say it anyway, is that money, that $5 to $10 million for battlefield preservation, which is match money, it's distributed around the United States, is money that the Civil War Trust is singularly responsible for lobbying. Government agencies are not allowed to lobby, and they don't generally. The National Park Service damn sure doesn't lobby for this, I can tell you that. The Civil War Trust does. We have a whole lobbying team that primarily works on obtaining that money. And we're so happy that a big chunk of it is going to go to the flower shop project, because it's so very important. And speaking of lobbying, Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn was mentioned, and I commend her to you. She's a supporter of the American Battlefield Protection Program, as is Senator Bob Corker, and particularly Senator Lamar Alexander. He's, of course, a United States senator, a former governor of this state, former Secretary of Education at the national level. I can tell you, I've met with him personally, he gets it. And he's as strong a supporter in the United States Senator for battlefield preservation, for American heritage preservation as there is. And I highly commend him to you, all of them to you. You know, let me just finish up by saying this. What Franklin's doing, what the community, what the citizens, what the government, the local government is doing on the scale that's being done, to my knowledge, has never been done in American history. And that is resurrect a significant part of American history. And it's not just Franklin's history, it's not just Tennessee's history, it's American history. And in a sense, what you are doing, what they have done, what they are doing, is making history in and of itself. And it's history that is our legacy, their legacy, that can be passed on to future generations, and it'll be as important and relevant as long as it's the United States of America. And you know something, my friends? That's a big deal. My compliments. Thank you.
Now it's my distinct pleasure to bring to the stage one of those names that Jim Lighthizer just mentioned. When I first met Eric Jacobson, he was an eager young historian who had come here to soak in the Franklin battlefield and to continue his research. But as everyone here, I think, knows, Eric has now become one of our true leaders in battlefield preservation and interpretation. And he still keeps up with all of the history work. I'm not real sure how he finds time to do all of this, but he's agreed to join us for a while this morning before going back over to the battlefield to get to work, to talk about the Battle of Franklin and its significance. And we could have no better speaker to do that than Eric Jacobson.
Wow. How do you follow Lighthizer? That's an almost impossible act. I think I want to start with asking everyone to please give a huge hand to the Civil War Trust, especially based on the announcement Jim made. There have been so many different players in the resurrection, if you will, of this battlefield, but I really can think of no other greater national supporter than the Trust and people like Jim and people like Mike, who I've gotten the privilege just to know through the years. So thank you again. And we're going to save that property. That deadline of May 31st may seem like it's right around the corner, and I guess in some ways it is, but we're going to save it. And I don't think, and Julian, we've talked, we're not done, are we, Julian? We got more to save. We've got lots more to save. So the Battle of Franklin, here we are. It's almost 150 years ago. And as I was sitting up front, looking at the banners, well, I was also struck by the fact that when you're someone like me, you live in the realm of people like John Schofield and John Bell Hood so much that you sometimes can get lost in this time of so long ago, but we obviously live in the present. But as I was looking at the banners, and I was walking some of the battlefield this morning, preparing for some of the things this weekend, and it was cold, and it was a little windy, and I was like, oh, this is just miserable. I just can't wait to get back inside. I was thinking about one thing as I was walking back, and I want everyone, as you're here and as you filter out onto your next thing, or you're involved in the various talks and lectures that are going to unfold throughout the day, take a moment and think about what was really happening 150 years ago, right now, and tomorrow, and the next day, leading up to November 30th. Really think about what was happening. Because one of the key components, I believe, to resurrecting this story was getting people, not just locally, but it starts there, but nationally, to understand that what happened here mattered, that it was important, that what happened here deserved a far better fate than to be shunted aside and be a secondary story of a secondary story, which is really what Franklin was. There were very few people who really knew anything about it, and even among those, I would dare to say many of those didn't really care about it. They were more interested in blaming people like the fellow right here, and making Franklin something that was almost a caricature, a cartoonish sort of story. It never should have happened. It was all because of the raging manifestations of John Bell Hood murdering the Southern Army on the field south of Franklin. Who wanted to remember that story? Not Southerners, not Northerners, not most people. If you make something into a story like that, you make it less important. And so it's easy to pave over it and build on it and just cover it up. And then once that happens, it is forgotten. And then time goes on. And it becomes incredibly hard to bring that story back. I remember, I think Jim said he was sitting on his back porch when you got the call from Rod Heller about the golf course. I was living in Arizona, and I got a letter in the mail about the golf course, the eastern flank as we now know it. And I remember thinking, my God, I've been waiting my whole life for this, for people to actually believe that this was important. It takes a handful of disciples to spread the gospel. But once it takes hold, it has a great power. And that's in some ways what this story has become. It has a vibrant hold on people. Once they get it, you can get people to understand almost anything. But once they believe it in here, it doesn't leave. And that's what's happened with Franklin. We have 100,000 people a year now who visit the battlefield and visit the house sites. They're coming here. And yes, Rogers, they are spending money, and lots of it. But they're doing something else. They're learning about our collective history. Our collective history. Not north, not south, not east, not west, not black, not white, not rich, not poor. Our collective history. What was happening 150 years ago? Right now, we were dying. We were dying collectively. The country was dying. No one knew. See, it's always easy to look back years later and say, well, the war was all over in the spring. It was all fait accompli in November of 1864. It was not. It was not. It was no more a final deal than World War II was in March or April of 1945, because there was still a lot of fighting yet to go in the South Pacific. And a lot of people were going to die. And there was much yet to be decided. But this country was dying. We were an idea. We had gained our independence from the crown, but we were an idea. We became something different because of this war. We became something different because of battles like Franklin. And sometimes battles like Franklin are very interesting studies in and of themselves. And I could certainly tell you all sorts of details about the battle, but I'm not going to do that. I don't think that's not really my angle today. Battles like Franklin are interesting because some of the worst and the most savage fighting occurs towards the end of these great wars, when it would seem that things might be decided, but see, they weren't. The war wasn't over. And what happens that autumn, and what's beginning to really take shape right now, is that one army is making one final push back up into Tennessee to try and drag the war out. Maybe win. Maybe. The other side, fighting to preserve the Union, isn't sure when the war is over. Been shipped back now, some of the troops from the state of Georgia back here to defend Middle Tennessee. Each side equally committed. I was talking to Damien and Van last night for a few minutes at Carnton. I think there is something incredible about the story of Franklin's, just sort of in and of itself, what happens that afternoon. Some of it would be written about in the days leading up to it. Walter Rohrer, a Mississippi officer, wrote his sister, and he said, "We are noble martyrs engaged in a holy cause. No cause is more holy than the cause of our country." When you are opposing someone who believes themselves to be a martyr, you are dealing with an incredibly dangerous opponent, and the U.S. troops knew it. The Confederate soldiers led by John Bell Hood, who came into Middle Tennessee that autumn, knew full well that the war was not going well, but they were very committed. Walter Rohrer and many of his comrades would not survive Franklin. He's buried today at Carnton. They believed in it. But so did the men led by John Schofield. They believed in the preservation of the Union. And so the battle unfolds in the way that it did, and it was terrible, and it was awful, and it was costly. It scarred this community in ways that many American communities were scarred. You see, Franklin wasn't unique in that story. What was unique is that Franklin's story had been forgotten. Franklin was scarred like Gettysburg was, and Fredericksburg was, and Atlanta. It was just that Franklin forgot about it for a lot of different reasons. What has happened in the last decade is truly amazing. To see this story brought back to life, to see John Bell Hood put in some proper perspective, to discuss the role of the Federal Army, which had virtually been ignored in the obliteration of the Southern Army and the death of 6 Confederate generals. Listen, there were 25,000 guys wearing blue here that day who should not be forgotten. But why does it matter? Because right now, 150 years ago, this idea was facing its greatest trial. And we were very close to disintegrating from within, splintering from the outside, and collapsing upon ourselves. This idea was put to its greatest test. And don't think for a moment that there weren't dictators and kings and other leaders across the globe who were watching very closely what was happening in this country. And they were saying, you see, you can't trust the people to govern themselves. You can't have this democratic republic. They're too stupid. Look at them. They'll just kill each other. And we killed a lot of ourselves. But in the end, the country did not fracture. We did not become a balkanized sort of America, with 50% of what we know as the continental United States still unsettled at that point. Who was going to get that? The Confederate States or the United States? Would a foreign power intervene? That's what happens if we split. The splitting doesn't stop. The endless separation never stops. That was what was at stake. And this isn't about good guys, bad guys, right or wrong, or anything like that. It was the different ideas that existed were put to the ultimate test. Someone asked me just the other day, why would the Confederate soldiers fight as they did at Franklin? Why would they fight so desperately? At that stage, even if they didn't know when the war was going to end, they had to know the way that it was going. Why would they do that? For many of the men in the Army of Tennessee, and I think after talking to Damien last night, that even perhaps one of the most famous participants, Patrick Claiborne, knew full well what was at stake. Their way of life was changing. Their way of life was disintegrating right in front of their eyes. And so one last time they came across 2 miles of open ground. As a Mississippian said, better to die in a blaze of glory than die a coward. When this war ended, there were nearly 750,000 soldiers dead. 750,000. And I think Jim alluded to this. When it was over, there were really two issues that were resolved. The war resolved two things. Slavery would be extinguished, and the Union was preserved. I think for far too long there's been this idea that when the Civil War ended, we all got back together and just moved on. Everything was great. It was not like that. The country was kept together, and freedom was granted to 4 million people, but equality would be far down the road. And there's a great example of the difference between freedom and liberty. You can be free and be denied liberty. But in that story is the greatness of America, is that it's not always perfect, and it's often very messy. We just had an election. Oh, and I know some people are not happy with the election, and I know some people are thrilled with the election. But you know what? We still have elections. We still have elections. If you don't like them, vote them out. You don't need term limits. Here are the term limits. Get involved. Get involved in politics? Yeah, if you don't want to run for office, at least vote for someone. Support them. Be engaged on all levels. All the time. But it wasn't all good right after it. It took so long to fix some of those issues left lingering from the war. And that leads us to 150 years later, and why this is important. And people ask questions like that all the time. People are very curious. They want to know about this, this, and this, and this. It's important, I think, for this reason, because it still impacts us. Many of the lingering issues, the power between the state government and the federal government, is still debated to this day, and it should be, always. That should never go away. That's our job. Our job is to openly question everything. That never changed after the Civil War. Just took a long time to fix many things, but some of the very basic fundamentals of this country still exist. But it is very important. One of the questions I ask is, how is it important to someone who moved here 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago? Well, geez, it's really important. My family didn't move here until 20 years after the Civil War. See, contrary to what some might think, I don't have a dog in this fight. I grew up in the North, I live in the South, and I don't have any ancestors that were alive or were living here at the time. But think about if your family moved to this country in the 20th century, which is the vast majority of America today. Would there have been a country for them to go to? There wouldn't have been just a United States of America as it existed in 1880, 1890, 1910, 1950. It wouldn't have existed. The world was watching us in 1860. The world was watching us in 1862. The world was watching us in 1865 as we nearly destroyed ourselves. I believe we were destined to fight this war. I don't believe there was any other way out of it. The seeds for this war were sown in the late 18th century. We were doomed to fight it, and we did. And men on both sides, committed to their belief systems, fought desperately on battlefields across this country. And when it was over, some of those same men who had so violently opposed themselves began the long process of rebuilding. And do you know, I think one of the greatest testaments to the soldiers who fought this war and survived it is that they did not fight it again. They became good citizens and saw a united country with many imperfections and many inequalities, but they saw a country moving forward. And dare I say that if they could see it today, I think they would be shocked and amazed, and in most ways, quite pleased that we are here, that sort of shining beacon in the world. We are a unique place, put to the greatest test in the 1860s. on battlefields like Franklin. John Bell Hood, like many others, when the war was over, had to figure out how to get on with his life. And John Bell Hood would live in New Orleans for many years and was married and had many children and died a tragic death at the end of yellow fever. But John Bell Hood, like many former Confederate officers, had to apply for amnesty. And I never forgot when I read John Bell Hood's amnesty letter to President Johnson. And he said that he would support the United States with the same zeal and vigor with which he attempted to tear it apart. If John Bell Hood felt that way about this country in the aftermath of the Civil War, I don't think there's anyone who has a right to complain, because that man gave physically as well as emotionally. And the fellow he opposed, an old West Point classmate, would go on to do many things. He recrafted the entire United States Army. He created a model that we would carry into World War I. He also chose an interesting little place as a naval base. It's called Pearl Harbor. He established it. Schofield Barracks in Honolulu were named for him. The names of these two men live in the daily lives of thousands of people. Fort Hood in Texas and Schofield Barracks. They went on with the others who survived this great war and the people who lived in this town, and figured out how to move on in a United States of America, where finally the promise that all men are created equal by God, men set the differences, not God. That in this country all would have a true chance of equality forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. It's often said around here, boy, it's not good when Julian Bibb and Van West get together. Well, I'm now going to prove to you there's a more dangerous duo than that, and that's Eric and me. I want to close this by echoing with my own thoughts about what this all means, not only for the Battle of Franklin commemoration, but what we have been trying to do as the Sesquicentennial Commission for the state of Tennessee. Confederate Colonel Cassius Merrill said, "Franklin was no battle storm, but a cyclone, which struck and seared the earth and left it red with blood and vocal with groans of dying men. It was a tornado, tore apart armies, a town, leaving pieces of lives and community asunder, to be stitched back whole by those who stayed. Indeed, we know that knitting took place in scores of homes and properties across Franklin as the town became one large military hospital. The war's horror did not end suddenly when the armies departed for Nashville for that one great final battle. No, the stench of death lingered for weeks, left stains in parlors and bedrooms, seared the memories of all. When the stillness of battle settled upon the town on the morning of December 1st, a young teenager, hardened figures, took to the battlefield to see with his own eyes, quote, a weird and gruesome sight of men shot and wounded in every part of the body, crying out for help, telling their names, and calling for friends to help them. Hold that image in your mind as you are out on the battlefield today, of men calling their names, asking their friends for help. It seared the memory of that teenager. And in writing this account, Hardened Figures opened with just a sort of observation. I started out to go over the battlefield accompanied only by one of our slaves, a little younger than myself. And those words still stop me short every time I read his account. Because there's that image that you cannot get out of your head of two teenage boys, one white, one black, one free, one slave, and together they're walking a battlefield where, as Hardin wrote, the dead and wounded were so thick upon the ground that it might be said without exaggeration that one could walk upon the dead and never touch the ground. And as my good friend Eric has already reminded us, there was that cyclone that tore apart Franklin on November 30th, 1864. But there was one even larger and more profound on its way. The final emancipation and the constitutional end to slavery in the United States. Go back to that young black teenager. Of course, he would become a black man. A black man who was a citizen of the United States, a right suddenly in his grasp to self-determination, because that is the fundamental right of an American, to decide for themselves how their life and how their community could unfold. I always think, I wonder if he stayed and helped to establish the Hard Bargain neighborhood or the Natchez Street neighborhood here in Franklin. Maybe he worshiped at the First Missionary Baptist Church or at Salter's Chapel, AME Church. Maybe he did. Maybe he went to your community where he made his mark and made a difference. As Eric has said, death, destructions, were legacy of Franklin's. But so too was opportunity. In the freedom for half of the community they had little to none before. If there is a single message that we have tried to extend across Tennessee during all of these sesquicentennial events, it is that of a renewed and redefined citizenship, how modern America was forged out of the hate, the dying, the destruction of the Civil War. And as John Bell Hood said, he would protect the United States of America with the same vigor and every ounce of his being as he had fought to tear it apart. The destruction of the Confederate Army of Tennessee after the battles at Franklin and Nashville, that 150th anniversary that we're now focused on over the next several weeks, it devastated those who had for so long believed in the cause. Sam Watkins, certainly the most famous writer about all of these events, said, "It was the finishing stroke of the independence of the Southern Confederacy, a chance in time that he and others still wished they had another shot at." Now, in other homes, though, and many across Tennessee, because this was truly a state divided between those who believed in the Union and those who believed in the Confederacy. The news of Franklin and of Nashville and the dawning of a new year in 1865 was received much more hopefully in the words of one of the most popular songs of that decade. "My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling through the vineyards where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on." They saw a new era coming. And you wonder if that black teenage slave walking the battlefield with hardened figures, had he ever heard that song? Probably not. But certainly those thoughts were in the air and within communities. Those words embodied that a change was coming. It was just a long time in coming. And as we all sadly know, the barriers to freedom and self-determination did not come down so soon. In fact, they were not smashed until 100 years later, when that refrain, "My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord," were the final words spoken in the final public sermon of a young African-American minister who died the next day in Memphis, Tennessee. That man, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., along with tens of thousands of others, finally brought the promise of freedom and self-determination to all of us who live and rejoice in life as Southerners. Yet, Eric and I have often talked about this, the persistence of some other reality. Many persist in that fallacy still, that the Civil War doesn't matter. Oh, it only matters to those of you in the South who are just lost in your past. Well, maybe it doesn't matter to a nation of cynics or a nation of talking heads. But certainly it does to a nation of citizens, because it was here in places like Franklin, Nashville, Stones River, scores of battlefields across the nation. The tide of history was turned, and the result was that the United States of America began anew. And as school children say across the country every morning, it began anew as one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So you not only get one sermon today, you get two. Because if you don't think the Civil War matters now, tell me what does. Thank you. I have been given to change the mood just a bit. I have to find my little sheet of paper with my instructions, because this serves as the closing remarks of this opening event for the signature event. And I just want to also close by reminding everyone, this is just something that we feel strongly as a state that we should do, because it does not only remember all of those who fought and died for what they believed in, but it helps to remind us who we are as a nation. And this is just the start of a wonderful period of history, preservation, commemoration, and good times. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Poets from the Neighborhood. I'm Louise Collin,
And I'm George Spain.
and we're going to read you some poetry by your friends and neighbors.
The Smell of Leather by Sherry Page. I remember this smell of leather the first time a dank day stilled us after a long run. Trees were high and bright as flags waving. Faces glistened from the teamed effort to get to this rise on the land. Lungs filled with sweet breathing, a kind that only happens here. Great hearts beneath us sorting out, and their pleasure to be so alive. I remember as turkey buzzards graced the blue above like angel kites, you turning to whisper, God is in this place, and we knew we followed more than foxes.
At First Light by Gail Bunton Haddock. The drive on the far side of the frosty field leads away straight and deep to the nestled house, still sleeping in the hushed chill of the breaking light.
If melody is nourishment, harmony is healing by Amy E. Hall. Do you ever wish you could drink music first in soft sips, then steady swallows, and at times greedy gulps? I need constant installments, like doses of medicine, carefully measured out by the hours, days, and weeks of the month. It moves me like the majesty of a mountain, the splendor of a sunrise, the openness of an ocean, like the moment you know that you're home.
Baby, Baby Mine by Susie Margaret Ross. In the Waffle House, I listened to the jukebox and ate my waffles. They were doubles with pecans and that sweet, sticky syrup. Baby, baby mine, the singer was calling. Please, please come home. Too late, I murmured and gobbled up my bacon. Thank you for being with us today.